most welcome. My name is Jonathan. I work here at the AAU as the Director of Research and Economic Planning. And AAU is part of the consortium that is working on the demographics of African faculty. This project is led by our partners in Europe, Education Sub-Saharan Africa, and the Professional Reference Bureau. I also introduced the president. So these organizations and AAU are working with National Council for Professional Education to implement this important pilot project. So you are welcome. The purpose of the meeting is to discuss the findings of the report and our next steps. What do we do? What do we do with the report? Do we put the report in the shelf and then we continue business as usual? Or we try to do something about it? So that is why we have invited you before, and we are happy that you have found time out of your very busy schedules to come to be with us for this important meeting. So according to the program that we have, there are a few remarks to be made by some dignitaries here, by the Secretary of AAU, the representative of the AAU Secretariat of the SCTE, the ESSA Chair, and President of PIO. So I would like to invite the Secretary of the AAU, Professor Tenekide, to give us his welcome remarks. He is an Ivorian. Before joining AAU, he has worked as the Vice Chancellor of the University of Nango Bragua in Cote d'Ivoire for 10 years. And when 8 years, yeah. So he is a professor of neurophysiology, and he tried to enter politics, but he discovered that you cannot teach and hold on do things. So he was appointed Deputy Minister for Health, and he stayed there for a very brief period and realized that he cannot fit with that system. So he ran away and he became the Executive Secretary of the AA. So he has been here, and he will give us the welcome remarks as we move forward with it. Third stakeholders. Professor Haley.
Thank you. The representative of the Honorable State Minister of Higher Education, the Secretary General of the Association of West African Universities, the representative of the Executive Secretary of MCT, the Chairman of Education Sub-Saharan Africa, ESSA, Mr. Patrick Done, the CEO President of Population Reference Bureau, PRB, Mr. Jeff Jordan, distinguished Vice Chancellors, and other institutional heads gathered here, other colleagues from various African higher education institutions, distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, our protocol observed. I would like to warmly welcome you all to this important third stakeholders meeting on the DAF pilot project on Ghana, I mean Demographics of African Faculty. The Association of African Universities is partnering with NCT, Education Sub-Saharan Africa, based in the UK, and Population Reference Bureau, based in the USA, to implement this Mastercard-funded pilot study. As you may recall, The first DAF stakeholders meeting was held on Thursday, 8 March 2018, and the second was also held Thursday, July 26, 2018, in order to share the intention of the DAF consortium with you as higher education institution leaders in Ghana, and to get your feedback on the proposed project. The useful suggestions and comments gathered from you were used for the development of the draft pilot report, which you now have, and which will be presented shortly at this third stakeholders meeting. The purpose of this meeting, as Professor Jonathan Bai said earlier, is to discuss the way forward now that the report is out. The DAC project is meant to improve data collection, analysis, and use among the African higher education community, beginning with Ghana. The DAC consortium partners have collected and analyzed data on the numbers of faculty by age, gender, field, role, and rank, as well as data on student enrollments by subject areas in Ghana. The consortium has developed estimates and projections to describe current and future demand for faculty, as well as describe the policy environment and national context affecting the supply and demand of faculty in Ghana. It is my hope that the ensuing presentations and discussions will enrich the draft document and make it a reference point for further studies. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to finally extend my warm invitation to you all to the AAU Conference of Rectors, Vice Chancellors, and President of African Universities, Correville, from 8th to 11th of July 2019, organized in collaboration with Al-Azhar University in Cairo, Egypt. The theme of the conference is the role of higher education institutions in promoting the Continental Education Strategy for Africa, CISA 1625. On these brief remarks, it is my pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to welcome you all to the third stakeholders meeting this morning. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Hiller. The consortium has worked in partnership with the National Council for Tertiary Education of Ghana in assembling the data, analyzing the data, writing the reports. And so NCTE is represented by one of the directors here, Dr. Newman, who is representing the Executive Secretary. So Dr. Newman will give us brief remarks. Dr. Newman.
And to welcome all of you. And I've been told that there's a broad spectrum of tertiary education institutions, not just the public. It seems that even the private outnumber the public institutions at this place. NCTE did collaborate with the team that undertook this work. In fact, the data was collected from NCTE. So that leads to the importance of data you supply to us. Some of you think that it's a bother every year to come to you for data. Fortunately, it's my office that collects that data. So we will keep coming to you. If you supply us with the wrong data, everybody in the world will be fed with the wrong data. From here, we give it to UNESCO, we give to everybody. So it's important that you are the leaders. As for the public, if they don't, we have a way. But the private, hey. Okay. The data assembled here gives us so much excitement. We undertake similar analysis every year. We are excited because we are currently analyzing or auditing, looking at staffing in public institutions. We have already undertaken staff audit of technical universities, and we've been requested to undertake similar exercise in private, in traditional universities. So I think they have started. IPS, they are the other institutions. UPSC, they are already there. Yeah, we are not IPS here, EPS. Prof, forgive me. And I believe that this exercise kind of complements what we are doing, and it will lead to a broad policy on staffing, not just in private universities, because also for public. You heard the Minister of Education say that very soon, without a PhD, you cannot teach in a university, not just public. And we have several problems, both in the public and the private institutions. Some have certificates that should not qualify them to teach there. Some staff are recycled. Some perhaps teach at Legon, and then comes to a private institution to teach. So somebody suffers, either the students in Legon or some places they have to suffer. And then there are issues of what age is appropriate. NCT, the government are in discussion. What age is appropriate for somebody to teach? Is it up to 70 like the judges do or something? Or up to 65 or whatever? So that discussion is ongoing. And then this one actually fits into it, and we are very grateful. This workshop gives us opportunity to own this document. It shouldn't be seen as people from outside undertaking. We have, as I said, we've been doing this all the time, but this one gives opportunity to confront ourselves with our own information you have given us, and come out with suggestions to improve, to inform policy making, because the government is undertaking a similar exercise to undertake policy on staff recruitment, staff development, staff retention in the public universities and private universities as well. NCT has developed recommendations for staff promotion, academic staff promotion. And that will affect everybody, because we will send it to everybody. And if you have to abide by it and even improve upon it. If you say you won't abide by it, you say professor needs about 20, 25 papers, and you think you will do better, it should be higher than what the NCT has recommended. So it will soon come to you. If you haven't received that recommendation, we will soon send it to you. So private, public, everybody should take part in developing the staff so the people come out. As we keep saying, give technical universities or give others, give them skills. Sometimes the staff themselves are those who need the training, not the students. But without the skills, you cannot transfer any skills. So this is very important. Let's come out with innovative ideas that would enable us to have a vibrant tertiary sector, in line with what our Deputy Minister said, that we want to make Ghana a hub of tertiary education in the African region. Thank you very much.
It's lovely to see so many of you again. That's probably the best sort of feedback you get, really, isn't it, that people come again. Well, as Jonathan said, I've been very fortunate after a very difficult start in life to experience lots of many wonderful things. But actually is spending a lot of time in slums in Africa. I was born in a UK slum, so I feel very at home in some of the more difficult places that we find. And actually, the real creator of this project actually are young Africans, not me, because another charity I built, which has now helped 600,000 young Africans through better quality maths and English skills. There was a day, actually 2 days in South Africa that really hit me hard and provoked me to action. One was with a young lady who we had been working with for 5 years. We got her the grades to get into one of the top universities in South Africa, but she couldn't get a place because there weren't enough. And the reason there weren't enough was there not enough faculty. And that made me cry. It made me feel energized, and it made me feel actually here is something across the continent. There are probably hundreds of thousands of young women, young men like that, not getting the places. Africa's losing out in terms of economic and social development because of that. Then later that week, there was a riot. South Africans love to riot. It's a sort of national competitive advantage. They are the sort of best rioters in the world, I think. I mean, they really beat the Nigerians hands down, I think. They're really good at riots. But this week, there was a riot at one of the top universities in South Africa, and young people were smashing through the gates of the university, and it was admissions day. And what they were doing was they were so frustrated they couldn't get a place. They were hurting other people so they couldn't take their place, so they would get their place. And I had this vision of, with the population we have now, if we're short of faculty now, what will happen in 10 years' time if we don't deal with this issue? Do we want that to happen? Do we want to lose that opportunity? Do we want that human tragedy? Do we want those riots? Do we want more of that? And that was a very catalytic thing for me. ESSA is a charity I founded in 2016. We're working on a number of big systemic issues in African education. All of them, we only work with local partners. All of them, we actually try and arrange for the right people, the right funding to join things up. The two other big projects that it's very briefly worth telling you about are, one is we've created the first free online searchable database of research done by Africans on education. I got really frustrated in not being able to find research done by Africans. A lot of the research that's accessible is northern universities, and so we've created this database. It's on our website. The second area actually is the other reason that many young people can't get their place at university is they haven't got the money. They can't get a scholarship. And so we've created what we're calling a scholarship impact hub to study what are the most effective characteristics of the most effective scholarship models, and how can we build greater trust in the scholarship system to get more people funding more scholarships, and how can we make those scholarships more directed towards the most strategically important subjects, like statistics. Has to be one of the most employable jobs. You know, if you've got a degree in statistics, you ought to be able to get a job. However, the number of scholarships for statistics in many African countries are really low. That seems crazy. That seems like we need to do something about that. So today is, I think, as the speakers have said so far, all about action. Because there is absolutely no point producing any statistics unless someone does something as a result. There is no point saying, actually, this is obvious that something needs to do if you don't actually do something. So Emmanuel and we had a fantastic meeting yesterday, and he used the word excited. Well, I'm equally excited, even though I'm sort of Irish English, so we don't use big American awesome words. We use kind of, so we would probably say we're quite excited, which means we're very, very excited. But I'm very excited about the prospect of the ideas that you will come up with today. I don't think there is, as the Americans would call it, a silver bullet. I don't think there's one thing that we can do to change this game. I think there are many different things. So if you take gender, or if you take the science issue or other things, I think we need a collective of policy interventions and practice and some changes of attitude to actually do that. But I think we were greatly encouraged yesterday. We've been greatly encouraged over the last year with our relationships with NCTE. And we're greatly encouraged by our relationship with the AAU, because Ghana's a pioneering pilot for this. Many other countries look to Ghana as an exemplar. So actually, if we can get this progress here, I think you'll stimulate progress across the continent in many other countries too. So I thank you all very much for allowing us into your wonderful world. And I really look forward to the rest of the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Patrick. We like to invite the President and the Chief Executive Officer of Population Reference Bureau to give us his welcome remarks. Population Reference Bureau is a household name in demography and population studies. I remember when I was a student, I was referencing the charts of Population Reference Bureau in my analysis. So we are happy to have the CEO himself present here. And Mr. Jeff Jordan is an alumnus of the prestigious Princeton University in the USA. He brings enormous experience to bear, the work the PROB does in terms of strategic leadership with a view to ensuring that there are positive financial and programmatic performance. So he has published extensively on topics ranging from demographic trends to contraceptive security to gender and reproductive health policy. So he has enormous experience working in Latin America and the Caribbean, Eastern Europe, and Asia. So that PRB, Population Reference Bureau, is part of this consortium and enhances the quality of what we do because they try to make sense of data with a view to improving the health and the well-being of humanity. So we are happy that PRB is part of this movement. And so on that note, I'd like to welcome Mr. Jeff Jordan, the President and CEO of PRB, to give us his welcome remarks. Mr. Jeff.
Thank you. And President Imba, I will make my payment to you for the amazing PR that you just did, both for me and for PRB. Colleagues, it is actually an honor and humbling to be here among you at this point in time. And as an American, we don't do protocol very well, but I want to acknowledge the role of the government and the ministry in terms of joining us today for this. Actually, the call to bring you in came out of the second stakeholders meeting, which I really appreciated being part of. I want to acknowledge our partners in this and how important it has been to have this range of partners. I want to acknowledge all of you in the room for what you represent and for what you do on a day-to-day basis, and for coming back, for those of you who I recognize from the last round, and for those of you who are new here. I find it funny that I'm saying welcome, but I do welcome you as well on that part. I want to establish my African roots as well. You do realize that as the cradle of civilization, we are all African. So I will claim that as a certain part. But there are two other important parts about it. So not only as the cradle of all that's going there, I've actually spent the majority of my career working in and on issues related to the Sub-Saharan Africa. And I think I've worked in about 25, I've had the privilege to work in about 25 countries in Africa over the course of my career. So it is, it means a great deal, but it also means such a great deal to the future. And I don't simply mean the future of Africa, I mean the future of the globe. If you look at, and as you are all part of the AU's Agenda 2063, but we don't even have to go that far out. The future of the world, the future of the world's productive population is here. The growth, and any growth that's going to occur in the working age population in the world, is not occurring anywhere else on the continent. It is occurring in Africa, which makes your roles all the more crucial and important to the future of the world. Because if we collectively don't take the young population that we have today, and not even just the young population, anyone seeking to better themselves through education. And what's so amazing right now in Africa is not only to see increasing completion rates for secondary education, but increasing numbers of people coming back to school with those new opportunities. So what stands here and now is so crucially important to my children in America as much as it is to your children here. So that's part of what's important for me. As reference, PRB has been around for a long time. We were founded in 1929. In the US, it actually the founding point of early demographic research when demography became its own kind of field of study. And we see ourselves as linking research to policy. We are a research organization, but we are also a policy communications and a training organization. And so what's critical for me and what I'm so excited about this third stakeholders meeting is that's the point at which we're at. We've gathered information, we've collected, we've worked together to do that. We've actually shown this information one time around, and the reason that we're called back together is we will share the information again. There are many of you who are new to the table, and we'll come, but there are many of you who were here with us in August or July when we delved into the data to make sure that we understood what it might mean. But the whole point is, what good is data and research if you don't do something with it? You know, there's that great statement or question that if a tree in a forest falls but no one is there to hear it, does it make any sound? Well, I would offer the same thing for any research document. I would offer it for anything that is done to try to advance a field. Is the research may be fabulous. The research may be wonderful. It may be important. It may be right to point. It may tell you exactly what you need to know. But if nobody ever picks it up, if nobody ever debates it, if nobody ever uses it for programmatic or policy change, then why'd you do it? Why was it done? I was actually interested in Professor's point about we're going to make sure that if that's 25 papers that every professor has written, that they've got them. Well, I would actually challenge that and say, that's cool, that's great. Did anybody do anything with those 25 papers? Are we learning simply to learn? And there's something wonderful about that, and that we can do as individuals. But I would offer that the purpose of what we learn for and for what we're doing is how we utilize that learning and what we do with it. So today we get a chance to come back into what we've learned collectively. And as I said, what is owned here? What do you know? And you are the ones who are going to take this forward in collaboration with the government to figure out where and how we move this forward. How do we use this information to kind of take that next step? Because that's what makes you successful. And you clearly already are successful. But if we can help facilitate that dialogue and that discussion that takes us to that point, then I believe we've done our role in being partners. So I thank you. I look forward to what we bring from today, and I look forward to working with the team and to working with you to make sure that this continues and that this work is used for the kind of purposes that further where you're going. So thank you for all being here, and I really, really look forward to the dialogue that we will be having.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So we are now moving to the point where the meeting will be formally opened by the representative of the Honorable Minister of State for Tertiary Education of Ghana. We have both national and regional institutions represented here. And we have technical universities, you have the traditional university, the public universities, and you have the private universities. So you are most welcome. On that note, it's my pleasure to invite Mr. Divine, who is the Director, Research and Statistics at the Ministry of Education of Ghana. He is representing the Honorable Minister in charge of Tertiary Education of Ghana, Professor Kwesi Yanka, and he will give us his opening remarks and formally declare this meeting open. Mr. Divine, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you for the opportunity. I should say that the Secretary Minister was interested to come, but he has to attend cabinet meeting today. And since the Minister of State in charge of tertiary education is out of the jurisdiction, he has asked me to represent the two of them accordingly. I therefore will read this speech on behalf of the ministry. The AAU Secretary General, Professor Ntene, the Executive Secretary, NCT's representative, the Chairman of Education Sub-Saharan Africa, Mr. Patrick Duni, the President and CEO of Population Reference Bureau, Mr. Jeff Jordan, distinguished vice chancellors, pro-vice chancellors, and other institutional heads gathered here, officials from various African higher education institutions, invited guests, distinguished participants, friends of the media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. As I said, on behalf of the Secretary Minister, Dr. Matthew Poku Prempeh, MP Manchester South, and the Minister of State in charge of tertiary education, Professor Kwesi Yanka, we warmly welcome you to this important stakeholders meeting on Demographic of African Faculty Pilot Project in Ghana. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is our pleasure that we have you here to discuss this pilot report and to offer your recommendations for implementation. The AAU is partnering with NCTE, Education Sub-Saharan Africa, based in UK, and Population Reference Bureau, based in USA, to implement the Mastercard-funded pilot study on the Demography of African Faculty Pilot Project in Ghana. The partners will be making presentations to explain what they intend to do and how it will benefit our universities and decision makers. But I know, as well as you know, that reliable and accurate data are key to planning and decision making. The ability to make effective decisions is crucial to an institution's survival in today's higher education environment. In order for universities and indeed all tertiary education institutions to evaluate alternatives and make informed choices, they must have reliable and timely data upon which to make their decisions. Consequently, the development of effective data management techniques is of central importance to any higher education institution. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, data that has to be used has to be collected. The data to be used can be either collected primarily or by use of existing information. Data analysis is a process used to inspect, clean, transform, and remodel data with a view to reach to a certain conclusion for a given situation. On the other hand, data analysis helps in structuring the findings from various sources of data and acts like a filter when it comes to acquiring meaningful insights out of huge data sets. We expect that the AAU and its partners will be able to collect good quality data that will meet these characteristics and therefore be useful for planning and policy decision making. I am aware that not all the institutions represented here are members of the AAU. I would like to remind you that AAU was set up in 1967 with a view to improving the quality and relevance of higher education and strengthen its contributions to Africa's development by 1, fostering collaboration among all other members, 2, providing support to our member universities' core functions of teaching, learning, research, and community engagement, and 3, facilitating critical reflection on and consensus building around issues affecting higher education and the development of Africa through various networking events and other fora. Benefits of joining AAU include, but not limited to, 1, invitation to host AAU events and speak at AAU conferences. 2, opportunity for your faculty to participate in funded academic staff exchange missions. 3, opportunity for your graduate students to benefit from small grants for theses and dissertations to complete their research. 4, opportunity for your graduate students to benefit from funded internship programs. 5, use of AAU logo to indicate affiliation to the association. Inclusion of research outputs on the database of African thesis and dissertation platform. Access to AAU publications stored as open educational resources, and advertising your academic jobs, institutional news on the AAU weekly and websites. I am happy to inform you that there are more than 400 universities and other tertiary education institutions that are members of the AAU and which are benefiting from associating with AAU, you may join. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I am convinced that this meeting will provide a platform to share our experiences, discuss this report, and validate it for implementation. On behalf of the Honorable Minister and the Minister of State in charge of tertiary, we wish to welcome all of you to this important meeting. And on that note, I wish to declare this meeting duly open. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Divine, for declaring this meeting open. On this note, we will now have a presentation on the background to this study, this research work, and also the key findings. So 2 people will be talking, in addition to Mr. Patrick Dune, the project manager at ESSA, Education Sub-Saharan Africa, Dr. Jennifer Ude, will be making or be participating in giving out the key findings of this DAF pilot project. So you'll be hearing from them now. Over to you, Patrick and Jennifer.
Great. So fundamentally, we all know that higher education is a key enabler for economic growth, for social cohesion, for so many things. It's critically important. Next one. But there are 3 big challenges currently, and I referred to this a little before. There will be 1 billion more people across the continent. Participation rates at the moment across the continent in higher education are probably 5%. In developed economies globally, that number is 20–25%. So the combination of population growth and increased participation will drive increased demand for places in higher education. Demand from employers for young people with relevant and the right skills is rocketing across Africa. You can see that. In the north, many businesses, many large global corporates, I was at the senior leadership team of one of those, we all wanted more and more research to be done in Africa. People see that is where a lot of innovation will come from. To do that research, you need universities who've got research capability and capacity, and you need young people who are equipped with those skills to do it. Sorry, keep on that one for a second. NCT is, you are very privileged to have NCTE. Not that many countries have a similarly able and robust organization as that. And that is one of the reasons why we started in Ghana, because we thought actually you are amongst the best placed to do a piece of work like this. And we had good confidence that if the data was useful, that action would be taken. So those were the sort of key things around the background. In terms of why the partners, well, I am a mathematician and a statistician by background, but actually we felt we needed, if we could get the world experts in demographic analysis, usually more on the demand side than the supply side, that would be quite interesting. Also, PRB had all the data of the youth bulge development. So we had, if this is an equation with young people on one side and your supply and capacity on the other, we already had one side of the equation in the cupboard, the PRB cupboard. So if we could have access to that, that would save us time. So bearing in mind, we did this study fairly rapidly in terms of the context of these studies. Why the AAU? Because we saw Ghana as a first step, and we saw that if this actually was a helpful thing, that would be a great way of flowing out. And we are very excited by the Cairo conference that AAU will be having, and we're really hopeful we'll be able to get a prominent position at that conference so we can talk about what's been happening in Ghana, and then we can stimulate other countries to do this. Why Mastercard Foundation? Well, Mastercard, as you probably know, is one of the world's largest funders of scholarships in Africa, with over $1 billion funded in scholarships. And so we thought they would have an interest in at the strengthening and the capacity building of universities. The conversation with Mastercard to get the money to do this took half an hour because they thought the proposition was so compelling. The idea that NCTE, PRB, AAU, ESSA had come together, they were really, they thought this is terrific. They would not have backed this if it had just been NCTE, if it had just been ESSA, if it had just been PRB, if it just AAU. What appealed to them was the integrated nature of what we were doing. So that was a critical part. So that's why we got going. And the next thing really, I suppose, is really to hand over to Jennifer. This may be tricky because the slides aren't.
Yeah, I think you all have.
But you've got this
the
document.
handout, so
Yeah.
we can do that.
So if you have this
Yeah.
report, I'm sure Jennifer
Yeah.
will refer to points in it.
Definitely.
Just to explain briefly, Jennifer is has been a brilliant colleague at ESSA. Is Nigerian by descent, and will shortly be moving to Accra also. So she'll soon be one of you properly. So Jennifer.
Cool. I think before I go straight into the findings as well, just to recap on the objectives. So some of you will already know this because obviously you participated in the first 2 stakeholder meetings. So we wanted to analyse the demographics of faculty here in Ghana, to understand what are going to be some of the challenges ahead in terms of recruitment, retention of staff as well. We wanted to suggest what the future, the scale of the challenge, the scale of the issue, so the future challenge of demographics as well, and contribute to laying evidence to support changes in policy and action making. So this first phase of the project has really been about providing the evidence in order to inform policy. And this stakeholder meeting is all about how can we then influence policy. So that's what we really want your feedback for as well on next steps. If we look at, maybe if we reference these slides here in there as well. So this kind of gives us an overview of the situation in Ghana in terms of who is in our sample. So we considered the 213 tertiary institutions, so included public universities, private universities, but also the technical colleges, the specialised colleges as well. So in that sample, one of the striking things that came out of analysing that sample was that even though there's a growing number of private universities here in Ghana, the enrolment is largely in the public universities as well. So even though we have a growth in private universities, the enrolment, I think 47% of enrolment is in the public universities. So that's a huge pressure that they have to undertake as well. And I guess overall, in terms of student enrolment, so it's over 160 students versus just under 4,000 faculty as well. So we can already see that the student-teacher ratio is going to be a challenge here as well. Yeah, so I guess in terms of the approach, so we looked at, maybe let me go back a bit actually to the approach and methodology as well. So just to recap on how this was all done. So we took a collaborative approach. One of ESSA's main objectives is to collaborate with partners, relevant partners, so PRB and also AAU and also all of you here. So we took advice, we took guidance, leadership from the vice chancellors of your institutions, some of you which are already here, to inform the methodology that we use to approach the study as well. We also used the second stakeholder meeting to play back some of the findings to make sure that what we were finding out sat well with everybody and was correct as well. We used the existing Ghanaian policies which are out there, and we also used existing data from NCTE. So this is data that's already been aggregated by NCTE. These 3 components are the stakeholder meetings, the existing data, and the policy context was used to analyse the demographics of faculty. If we look at the policy goals, so you will already know this, so the objectives, the policy goals is really a 5% growth in enrolment, which is what the Ghanaian government are targeting as well. Also an overall student-teacher ratio of 27 in humanities versus 18 in science. This was also policy goals that we factored into our analysis. A 50-50 gender balance in both students and also in faculty, and in terms of quality, that all faculty should have PhDs as well. So we use this to factor into our analysis of the current situation and also the future challenges as well. Additionally, a 60-40 student enrollment in sciences as well. So that was another ratio that we used to factor in this. What we found is that the only policy goal that was being met was really the enrollment, so the 5% enrollment goal. Every other policy objective, people were falling behind in Ghana as well. So if we use the table at the bottom, we can see, so in terms of student-teacher ratio, the norm was 27:1. Currently it's 47:1 as well. If we look at the gender ratio, we want to aim for a 50-50 split. It's currently 64-36 split as well. So really it's just the enrollment, the growth in enrollment that is being satisfied here, and we have a way to go to ensure that we meet the other policy objectives. Interestingly, we also looked at the age distribution of faculty, and we found that within our analysis it appeared to be relatively balanced, but there was some gender inequality in terms of seniority. So I think our analysis showed that there's only eight women professors in the sample that we currently looked at as well. So I guess maybe if we focus on this middle graph here as well, and this is really the foundations of this study and the main findings here. So we looked at the policy norms, like I said, the existing data to project what is the current situation in there. So looking at the first kind of bar is showing us the current faculty. We said, okay, how many additional faculty will we need to replace the exits of people that might retire or leave the profession as well? We looked at how many additional faculty do we need to accommodate for what we termed as ghosts, moonlighters, and zombies. So ghosts, which we know, so people that are on the payroll and do not exist. Zombies are people that exist but are not necessarily performing their duties as faculty. And moonlighters would be the people that have multiple positions. So they might teach in multiple places or have multiple jobs as well. So they're maybe not as productive or not as effective as full-time faculty as well. So we said, okay, how many additional faculty do we need to accommodate for those types? And then we looked at key policy norms, so the gender. How many additional faculty do we need to ensure that we get the 50-50 split? How many for the student-teacher ratio, and also faculty by discipline, so the science disciplines. And the amazing thing really was that overall it was close to 4,000 additional faculty that we have found out that we need to accommodate for all of these. So this is really the scale of the problem here today at the moment, and which is really the focus.
Yeah. Is it possible for us to, after this?
Then we said, okay, we've got a huge challenge, a huge gap today. What is this challenge going to be in say 5 years' time? So we projected ahead to 2025. So assuming a constant growth in enrollment, so the 5%, and again considering this factor of ghosts, moonlighters, and zombies, replenished exits, and also consistent policy norms, how big is the challenge going to be? And what we found at this point is that we need nearly double the faculty to satisfy those policy norms as well. So we know that we've got a huge problem in terms of faculty here in Ghana. Interestingly, in our analysis, if we take that one policy norm that all faculty need to have PhDs, our analysis currently showed that there's only 149 PhDs in Ghana as well. So if we say there's only 149 PhDs, we need over 4,000 graduating a year. Over 4,000 to meet the demand now, and then in 5 years' time it will be even more as well. We know that we're already not going to meet this gap in faculty, and that was really the main findings. So I won't go over it all again, but I guess, I mean, just to recap, your institutions have all been involved in this, so over the last year, so either directly yourselves or your VCs. So this research has been shaped The methodology has been shaped by yourselves and your institutions. The data has been verified by your institutions as well. And really, we're coming back to you to talk about what can we now do with this data. So to recap, I guess, there is a huge gap. So we looked at the current faculty, which was close to 4,000 currently, and this is for public universities. We considered replenished exit, so we considered that faculty will be leaving every year. So some faculty will leave for various reasons as well. We also looked at the fact that not all faculty will be productive. So with the ghosts, the moonlighters and the zombies. So we took that into consideration. We're going to need additional faculty to cater for that category of workers. We also looked at the policy norms. So these are published policy norms that came from NCTE, and they're set by the Ghanaian government, and this is the benchmark that your institutions are working for. So we took some of these key policy norms in terms of faculty by discipline, student-teacher ratio, and also gender equality. And we said, okay, we have this many existing faculty, we have the figures of enrollment, how many additional faculty are we going to need to meet this, to meet the existing policy norms? And what we came up with, what we found out is that we're going to need close to additional 4,000 faculty, and this is just currently. And this is based on data from 2016 to 2017, so this is even old data. The scale of the problem will probably look a little bit different or a bit worse as we sit here today. And if we project even further ahead, which is what, and you can't see it, so if you just scroll one more. Yeah, if we project even further ahead, which is the graph on the right-hand side here, we can see that we're going to need even double. If the policies stay the same, if the growth in enrollment stays steady at 5%, we're going to need double the faculty to meet it. So we're aware that there is a challenge that needs to be satisfied, and we're really convening this stakeholder meeting to bring together government and the leaders of the institutions that have been part of this study to now think about what can we use this data, how can we use this data to inform policy. So ESSA is really about collaboration and partnership with the countries that we're doing work in, and also evidence-based research. So this is probably not surprising to a lot of you sitting here. So we all know that enrollment is growing. We all know that it's creating a lot of pressure on institutions, particularly in public institutions as well. And we know that it's going to continue to grow. So we know that we have a challenge. What we've done in a very short space of time, based on the available data from NCTE and a working relationship with AAU, is to convene the evidence to support kind of the pressures that you're all feeling. And what we really want the focus of this stakeholder meeting is to then work together with you, because it's only through the ownership of yourselves, the institutions and the government, work together with you to think about how we can use this evidence to inform action. And it might not just be policy, it might be action within your institutions as well. And we would be really interested to hear back from you guys as to ideas of what we can do to move this forward as well. So really this is the evidence to support what we are already feeling, and we need to now use that evidence to inform action and practice and change within the sector.
Great, thank you.
If you go to the next slide. So I'm going to come back and just recap a few things yet again. But it's fascinating. It's really fascinating, and it's great to have the government with us. It truly is amazing the kind of goals that the government set in terms of goals for the higher education sector. And as you see, those goals are aggressive, as they should be. They're good, but so part of what we are looking at is, and it comes back to the question that was posed, is there's a broader set of goals. I mean, you don't, again, have higher education goals if it's not serving something of a broader purpose. So obviously, there's a sense within the government, there's a sense within the country that higher education has to lead the way to move towards the kind of economy, to the kind of human capital that Ghana has and can represent for the future. And so these goals are ambitious, okay? And we can't get from from day one to day 365, you know, in a day. However, as this research has set out, we are just looking at a small slice of this. These higher education goals have a whole series of things. What is happening with secondary education? What is happening with providing enough teachers at that level? What is happening in terms of what's Industries Connect? There are other things, and I would say that at one level, that's outside the scope of what this meeting is about. Nonetheless, we have to all recognize that those play into this dialogue and this debate. This is about the future of Ghana, and this is about a set of very progressive and ambitious goals to move Ghana forward and continue to do that. And you play that role and you play that part representing the universities that you work in. So, and we deal with all kinds of small challenges as we go through that. And I would even challenge and as we said, the enrollment numbers seem to be the one thing that we're on target for. We seem to have gotten that right, that enrollment was going to be increasing by about 5% a year, and we've seen that. But as we've discussed a little bit, I'm not sure you can leave it there. I'm not sure that 5% a year is actually going to cover what is going to continue to happen. Because again, you already know what your population growth rate looks like. You already know what your secondary school completion rates are continuing to look like. You already are starting to see where you have students in industry and other things coming back in and seeking further education, whether that is a completion of a university degree or some kind of technical training or something else. So even though we've been on target with the 5%, I would say I wouldn't count on that staying at that level. You know, the opportunity is there. So the challenge comes, and then the other thing within this is, as I said, the government laid out a set of very ambitious and wonderful goals to try to move forward. But each of you represents an institution that has your own strategies and your own goals. And those, I hope, align at a certain level with where this is going. They may even be more ambitious. They may be larger and greater. You know, what's your share in that? Where does that go and what's going on? And so it's exciting, but what happens here matters. What happens in terms of what's the government's level of support for where this is going? What's the government's level of intervention? Where are standards set? What is going on? And I think it's great that we've had representation from the ministry, and we had the comments by Dr. Newman as well to being open to the idea that this is a point in time where there's more change happening. And this is the time where your voice matters in that change, and that there seems to be an openness from the government for partnership on this. It's not helpful if the relationship between the government and the sector is combative. Now sometimes that is a little competition's not bad, but combative doesn't necessarily move forward. So where and how do you stand in and challenge the government in terms of what your needs are, but also where are you partnered with the government in hand in trying to achieve these goals? Again, what can we talk about in terms of recruitment, retention, development of faculty, and where that's going? And if, as we stated earlier, there are only 149 PhD graduates last year in the public sector. Now, obviously, in the private sector, there is more being produced as well, but it's still not anywhere close to a level that will rocket you to a point. And that assumes that if you had all 149 PhD grads end up teaching, that may or may not be a good assumption. What are the ways that we look at those kinds of things and think of ways to move this forward? So what we want to do next and what we're moving into, and if you go ahead and do the next, I wanted to go ahead and jump ahead to kind of some of what the next steps are, which including the next steps today. So as we talked about before, part of this is where and how do we use this information to shine a light on an issue, to allow that dialogue, to allow that debate, to allow that investment, to allow that change. We also plan to seek, as a consortium, further funding to refine this methodology and to create some tools to use this information in a much more strategic, annual, biannual, other kind of way to continue to reinforce what needs to happen within the sector. We certainly are looking at the implications of this pilot for outside of Ghana. So again, you are pioneers, which is exciting, and where we go with that. But we do believe that, and certainly in partnership with AAU, that this gives an opportunity to say, if we then are able to do similar work in other countries, is there cross-learning? Are there things that you can learn from partner countries, they can learn from you in moving this forward? And again, because it's been done here first, what does the rest of the continent learn by the example that Ghana has produced in understanding its own data and using that to move forward? So what we're getting ready to move into, and actually, because we want to create 2 sets of working groups to debate this for a little while, to actually start looking at what are ideas about policy change and investment that are needed based on what we know, and where and how that, because I think that there's an opening right now with the government to be in that dialogue. And so what we would like to produce out of this is some of that dialogue. But I think it would be better to split into 2 groups. And so can I ask a question? How many in the room were at the second stakeholders meeting? If you can just raise your hand. Well, you were the second stakeholders meeting. I need a hand up there. Come on, folks. Come on. This is, you're educators. How often have you asked for a hand, show of hands in your room to know what's going on? Thank you very much. What I would like to ask is that group to join me downstairs. We're going to clear out, because you have been through this a couple of rounds. We started this dialogue the last time. I think that you're at a different point in the discussion to do that, and I'd like the rest of the team to stay here. Patrick, will you, Patrick, will you work? Professor, could I ask you to help me facilitate downstairs?
Yes, please.
That would be great. And what we want to do is take some time to, again, as I said, what would make a difference? What would make a difference? What can you do? Some of this isn't all policy. Some of this has to do with what do you do. Some of it has to do with where do you need the government as a partner? What changes do you need to see within that? Because we have been invited to share recommendations. We've even been invited to share. But it doesn't do any good to hear my recommendations. What good are my recommendations? I mean, I'm not Ghanaian. I don't work in a Ghanaian university. I don't know what would fit or what would work. I can tell you what I think, but what good is that?
And I would encourage a kind of feeling of how do we solve this particular issue rather than the big general issue. Because trying to work on the big general issue is kind of more difficult. So if you think of the gender issue, you think of the science issue. One thing we didn't touch on earlier, which might be relevant, which came out in the last meeting, was I think one person said, well, actually technology will solve this. And I think a number of the rest of the group said, oh no, it won't, because the current faculty we have is not equipped to deliver with the latest blended learning technology. So actually, if we install technology very quickly, we'll actually exacerbate this problem. We'll even need more faculty. So I think we took that as a kind of neutral item at the time, but you may also want to think about what other things are happening which will actually reduce some of these issues.